Hi, my name's Charles Nightingale. I'm the CEO of the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today with the CEO magazine to interview Jennifer Westacott, the CEO of the Business Council of Australia. Looking forward very much to hearing what she has to say about policy, about business, and about the wider community in general. As a part of the AICC's Leadership in Focus series, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the AICC and how you started with the Chamber?
Well, this is a very important organisation for the Business Council. Whenever we change presidents of the Business Council, the first speech they give is to the AICC because it's such an important part of the business community. We also have been on trade missions, and many of our members and past presidents have been on trade missions. I personally have been recently asked by David Gonski to go on the New South Wales Advisory Council, which I'm very honoured to do. So this is a hugely important organisation, not just to the Business Council, but to the Australian business community, given the huge innovations in Israel and the enormous learnings, both economic and cultural, that the two organisations and the Australian business community can exchange together.
In September last year, you spoke at an AICC event on the global perspective of business, finance and ethics with Stephen Dunn, Sally Lone and Dr. Simon Longstaff. In your 20 years of government experience and your current position at the BCA, do you foresee any major shifts in the way businesses are to conduct themselves ethically, particularly from a policy perspective?
Well, I think most successful companies understand that good reputation, good ethics and good values are the best way of building shareholder value and sustainable good returns. What I think we'll see is that just increase. Why? Because consumers are very empowered, they're very connected, they're very knowledgeable, and they will hold companies to account. And the relationships companies have with their customers are going to depend on reputation, quality and ethics. I also think we're seeing in the investment community a lot more scrutiny over investment decisions. What is ethical to invest in? And that will continue to place pressure on companies to be more careful and more thoughtful about the sorts of things that they do. And on top of that, I think we'll see governments across the world continue, as they should, to require the highest standards of governance and ethics from corporate citizens across the globe. Australia, of course, is in a fantastic position. Our companies are highly regarded. They're amongst the best run in the world. So we've got a lot of success to build on. This is a good news story for companies. It will build better returns. It will build better customer relationships.
In regards to change, your recent trip to Silicon Valley has led you to alter your support for the Productivity Commission's draft review workplace relations reform. What has led you to believe that the Commission has not gone far enough with its recommendations? And do you believe Australia's current workplace relations system is able to promote and support innovative workplaces that enable technology adaptation and innovation?
Well, what did I see in Silicon Valley that made me really start to rethink some of this? Firstly, I saw this incredible technological change, pure technology. So you think about the battery-operated car from Tesla, the robotics and artificial intelligence that are being used in manufacturing processes. These will change the way manufacturing is done. 3D printing, this will transform supply chains. The second big force I saw was software. You know, we talk about software eating the world, but the Internet of Everything that will connect customers, processes, metadata. This will change dramatically how work is done, how workplaces are kind of constructed, and it will dramatically change how businesses are organised. So what I saw was companies who couldn't adapt fast enough. They weren't just suffering, they were not existing anymore. They were out of business. So my anxiety in talking about the workplace relations system is we need to talk about the future, not the past. My concern about the Productivity Commission's interim report is that it was looking at the past. We need to look at the future. What kind of workplace relations system will allow companies to be agile, will allow workers to be flexible, to have flexible arrangements? What kind of structures will allow us to adapt and change so we keep pace with these big forces? We can't be looking back, we've got to be looking into the future, and we hope that the Productivity Commission really embraces the future of work not old ideologies from the past or old arguments from the past.
What is being done to prepare and engage Australian businesses with the increasing impact of technology and digitisation in the workplace? And are there lessons that we can learn from Israel in this regard?
Well, if we think about what's being done in Australia by Australian companies, one really interesting thing was how many companies I ran into in Silicon Valley, how many boards were over there looking at what was happening. So Australian companies are trying to prepare themselves. The Business Council's doing a lot of work with Australian companies to say, how do you get ready for these big forces of change? How do you get a disruptive mindset in your own organisation? How do you think about putting the consumer at the centre of everything you do, and then working your supply chains, your sourcing, your manufacturing around that consumer? How do you think about the role of digitisation? How do you think about converting that at the workplace level? If you think about Israel, because the kind of second thing that has to be done is governments have to create the right environment for businesses to be able to thrive and operate in this disruptive kind of world. What the Israeli government has done is very purposeful intervention to create a more innovative economy, skills, promoting key sectors where there's an international comparative advantage. We need Australian governments to create the right ecosystem, to mobilise the ecosystem so that companies can succeed in this very, very dynamic world.
You stated that Australia has a strong record of undertaking reforms and investing wisely in its people to lift productivity. Do you feel that the uptake of workplace innovation and a slow pace of change are resulting in Australia's weakening productivity levels?
There's no doubt our productivity isn't where it needs to be, and there's no doubt it needs to get back to where it was in the 1990s very quickly, because 80% of all real wage rises depend on lifting productivity. So we've got a problem and we've got to tackle it pretty quickly. I think a lot of companies are doing things. So one of the things that's a conundrum is that companies are investing in technology, they are looking at best practice systems, they are training their workforce, yet we're not seeing that convert into the productivity figures. So maybe there's a kind of lag indicator there. But it's absolutely true that we need to be able to convert technology, systems, process change at the workplace level so that it can convert into better prices for consumers, more consumers, better profit, and that of course then converts into the productivity figures. One kind of caution I always have for Australian companies about productivity is it's got to be value creating in the long term. If it's just cost reduction in the short term, it actually will work against creating long-term value for companies. So we've got to get the innovation right, the process improvement right, the doing things smarter right, so that we're creating that long-term value, not just for shareholders, but for the jobs of the future.
As a strong advocate for collaborative leadership, you have identified the government and politicians as vital in preparing the community and businesses for social and economic change. How do you feel the current government is faring in having this dialogue with the Australian people?
Well, obviously collaboration is a collective dynamic, so governments are crucial, but so are organisations like the Business Council, the AICC, the trade union movement, ACOS, religious organisations, secular society. These are all got to come together, but government is the glue that can bring people together. And what we've seen under Malcolm Turnbull's leadership, one of his first acts was to call the National Reform Summit, which brought together a whole lot of disparate groups to talk about the reform agenda. One of his first acts was to get them back in the room together, talking about our economy, talking about our future. So it's absolutely vital that government plays that glue role. The other crucial role for governments is to bring the community into these big conversations about change, because we can't just collaborate amongst a kind of group of elites. It's got to be a collaboration with the Australian people. And that's about explaining the opportunity, that's about explaining the challenges, that's about explaining the options. But fundamentally, the task of government is to create a positive vision for our country and to excite and enthuse people for the kind of changes that are going to see that vision kind of convert into prosperity, well-being, social cohesion and a peaceful, kind of harmonious society.
Since the release of the BCA's landmark Action Plan for Prosperity in 2013, have you seen many economic policy changes?
Absolutely. It's important to go back to what our action plan tried to do. So it was a 10-year plan in 3 clear horizons with very doable, specific things. But the most important thing it did was it changed the conversation in Australia from a conversation about redistribution to a conversation about growing the size of the economic pie, making the economy grow faster so that everyone in Australia was going to benefit through a kind of enduring prosperity agenda. But if we think about the specific things we had in our first horizon, in our phase 1, tax reform is on the agenda. Restructuring our federation so it's more efficient, we put out there, that's been taken up by governments. Getting our budget under control, understanding where we're spending our money. Governments are really kind of trying to get their head around that. Getting our skills agenda sorted, particularly in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, computer coding, lifting our literacy and numeracy. Getting our free trade agreements signed so that we've got the markets opened so that we can really kind of take advantage of our great strengths as a country. Many of the things that we listed in that action plan are now really the centrepiece of government policy and they're the centrepiece of kind of uncontested policy for the opposition. So we're really proud of what we've achieved through that action plan.
How can corporates and not-for-profits collaborate more effectively in generating community well-being so that the disadvantaged individuals within society can reach their full potential?
Well, that collaboration between business, be it large or small, and the not-for-profit sector is absolutely essential. I think the first thing businesses need to do is do what they do really well. Grow their businesses, grow the number of jobs they create, grow the wealth they create, because it's that platform that allows a society to actually kind of do more for disadvantaged people. And then there's those crucial partnerships. So many people who are disadvantaged need a lot of help to get into work. They need help before they go into the workforce with their literacy skills, their foundation skills, their life skills. They need help finding a job, and then when they're in a job, they often need help from a non-government organisation to help them stay in a job, to respond to some of the difficulties they might encounter. So non-government organisations that our companies partner with are crucial for that, particularly in the Indigenous space, where job brokers, people with training and support arrangements have really helped Australian companies, I think, be a great success story for Indigenous people to participate in the economy. Our companies are employing thousands of people. They're contracting with Indigenous suppliers. 85% of them have an Indigenous engagement task force. We take something like disability. Again, not-for-profit organisations are essential to help large companies. How do they employ people? How do they create the right environment for people to thrive? Not just physical things, but the kind of jobs that people can do and really thrive in. The kind of workplaces that support people who are often discriminated against, like people with a mental illness. These partnerships are vital because I always think the strength of a society is not how it treats the best, the most well-off people. The strength of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable people. And business, the not-for-profit organisations and government, I think, have a moral, social and economic responsibility to do everything they can together to make sure every Australian can reach their full potential.
Another area that the BCA heavily influences and that you personally champion is gender balance in the workforce. Please tell us about your role with Chief Executive Women and how you personally leverage this agenda amongst businesses.
Well, I've been a member of Chief Executive Women for a long time, and this is a hugely important organisation to help women reach leadership positions in companies across the country, either by kind of creating networks for people, by scholarships and direct sponsorship of people, and by, I guess, just creating greater awareness. When we did the action plan for enduring prosperity, we set a target that in a decade, Australian companies, BCA companies, would have 50% of women in senior leadership positions. And then we worked with Chief Executive Women to design a checklist for companies so that they could try and understand better what is happening with recruitment, what's happening with training, what's happening with the way leadership positions are described, what's happening with the pipeline of women coming through the system. And we're still working with CEW as we roll that out across our companies, because we've got some great successes. I mean, 34% of our companies were named as employers of choice on the basis of gender out of 90. That's good. We've got a long way to go, but it's absolutely vital that organisations like the Business Council and Chief Executive Women work together with Australian companies to say, how can we do better? How can we break down barriers? How can we remove blockages? How can we create the right environment so that women get into leadership positions, they thrive in them, they stay in them, and they reach the top as quickly as possible?
Placing our trust in institutions, leveraging technology and increasing our productivity. What do you envision for the future of Australian businesses?
Well, I'm a great optimist. I think there has never been a better time for our country. We're in the right part of the world for economic growth. We've got these incredible endowments of our natural resources, our great skills, our great institutions, and our very, very, very strong businesses. We have amongst the best governed, most successful companies in the world. We haven't seen the big corporate failures that we saw in other countries through the global financial crisis. So the foundation is strong. We have to, though, I think, embrace that opportunity, but our companies need to make sure that we're looking at our culture, that we're looking at our capacity to innovate, we're looking at how we unleash the creativity of the people who work in our companies, that we're putting the consumer at the centre, that we're tapping into these enormous supply chains which are now fragmenting, but that's an opportunity for Australian companies to get in and get access to these huge markets. As I said, there has never been a better time to be in business in the world, in this country, and I have nothing but great optimism that our companies will thrive, survive, and they'll become great multinational companies in a very, very competitive but exciting global environment.
Fantastic. Jennifer, that was an amazing and very enlightening discussion. And I just want to thank you on behalf of both the Australia Israel Chamber of Commerce and the CEO magazine. I'm sure the readers will find plenty of information in there that they can take to their workplaces. So I just want to thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.